My name is Diana Montgomery, 17 and counting down the days until freedom. Growing up in our picture-perfect suburban Massachusetts home, I never imagined I would become invisible, while my brother Kyle basked in the spotlight of his athletic glory. The searing pain in my ribcage made each breath a struggle as I sat in the emergency room, my mother's words still echoing in my ears. "Stay quiet, Diana. He has a future." But when Dr. Jenkins locked eyes with me, something shifted. Before we get into what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if stories of truth and justice resonate with you. Our family looked perfect on paper. The Montgomery household was known throughout Oak Ridge as the pinnacle of success. My father, Richard Montgomery, stood tall at 45 years old, a prestigious lawyer whose name adorned the most exclusive law firm in the county. His calendar was perpetually filled with important cases and meetings, making his absence at my school events an expected disappointment. Strangely, though, he never missed a single one of Kyle's football games, even rescheduling court appearances to cheer from the stands. My mother, Patricia Montgomery, had been crowned Miss Massachusetts in her youth. At 43, she maintained her beauty with religious dedication to skincare routines and weekly salon appointments. After abandoning her own career ambitions to raise a family, she poured all her unfulfilled dreams into Kyle. Her social media pages were shrines to his athletic achievements, while my accomplishments warranted only occasional mentions. Then there was Kyle, my 19-year-old brother, the golden child of Oak Ridge High School. 6 feet 2 inches of pure athletic talent with piercing blue eyes that coaches called focused and I called cold. Football scouts from top universities across the country had been tracking him since sophomore year. By senior year, scholarship offers piled up on our dining room table. Like trophies, Kyle knew his worth to this family and wielded it like a weapon. And me? I was Diana, the younger sister with a camera always in hand. Photography became my escape, my way of framing a world I couldn't control into something beautiful. Through my lens, I captured truths no one else in my family wanted to see. I dreamed of film school, of telling stories that mattered through documentaries that might someday change lives. The warning signs had always been there. When Kyle lost his first middle school football game, he punched a hole in his bedroom wall. Dad patched it himself instead of making Kyle take responsibility. "He just cares so much about winning," Mom explained to me with a nervous smile. Great athletes have that fire. That fire burned hotter as Kyle grew older. After losing games, he would destroy things: a broken gaming controller, a smashed phone, a kicked-in television screen. Each incident was met with the same response: understanding, excuses, new replacements. "He just needs to learn to channel that competitive spirit," Dad would say, writing checks to cover the damage. Last spring, I won the state photography competition with my series Unseen Corners. Photographs capturing overlooked spaces and forgotten places around our town. The ceremony fell on the same day as one of Kyle's regular season games. Neither parent attended my ceremony. I stood alone, accepting my award, while my family cheered for Kyle 50 miles away. "Your parents must be so proud," the judge had said, placing the medal around my neck. "They are," I lied. The weight of the medal nothing compared to the weight in my chest. My best friend Zoe was the daughter of Korean immigrants who ran the school newspaper. She was the first to notice the bruises on my arm 3 months ago when my sleeve rode up during journalism club. "Diana, what happened?" she had whispered, her eyes wide with concern. Bumped into a doorframe, I responded automatically, tugging my sleeve down. I'm so clumsy when I'm focusing on photography. Zoe didn't believe me. I could tell from the way her eyebrows pulled together, but she didn't push. Not then. To save for college applications, I worked part-time at Riverside Gallery, matting and framing photographs. The owner, Marissa, taught me about composition and light. The gallery became my sanctuary. Hours when I didn't have to perform the role of supportive sister. Hours when I could just be Diana. Our family maintained an immaculate public image. The Montgomery name carried weight. Dad's law firm represented half the business owners in town. Mom chaired 3 charity committees. Kyle graced the sports section of the local newspaper weekly. And I learned to smile in family photos while standing as far from Kyle as possible. Beneath my bed, I kept a photo journal documenting our family life. Not the posed Christmas card versions, but real moments. Kyle's face contorted in rage after losing a game. Mom looking away when she should have intervened. Dad signing a check to replace something Kyle destroyed. My own face, changing over time, smiles becoming rarer, eyes growing wary. The tension in our house had been building exponentially as Kyle approached his final decision on which scholarship to accept. 6 top universities wanted him, and the weight of this decision had everyone walking on eggshells around him. Everyone except me. I had stopped adjusting my life to accommodate his moods. Maybe that was my first mistake. Or maybe it was my first step toward freedom. The first time Kyle physically hurt me enough to leave a mark happened 4 months ago. February in Massachusetts means early sunsets, and I had discovered a perfect spot at Carson Beach where the winter sun created spectacular light patterns through a half-frozen pier. Kyle had a game that evening, but the team was required to arrive 2 hours early for warm-up. He rarely used his car on game days since the team traveled together on the bus. "Can I borrow your car for a couple hours?" I asked him that morning, explaining about the sunset photography opportunity. "I'll be back with plenty of time before you need to leave." Kyle tossed me his keys with unexpected easiness. "Have it back by 4:30 sharp. Coach wants us there early for this one." I promised I would, grateful for this rare moment of normalcy between us. The beach was just as beautiful as I had imagined. The golden hour light transformed the winter landscape into something magical. I lost myself in the photography, capturing frame after frame as the sun sank toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the ice-flecked sand. Time slipped away from me like it always did when I was shooting. When I finally checked my phone, panic flooded my system. 4:52, 22 minutes late. I had 13 missed calls from Kyle. I drove home as quickly as safely possible, rehearsing apologies. When I pulled into our driveway, Kyle's friend Jackson was just leaving in his truck. "He's in a mood," Jackson warned me. Had to drive him to the game. Coach benched him for the first quarter for being late. My stomach dropped. Kyle's punctuality was a point of pride for him. Part of the disciplined athlete image he cultivated so carefully. And now I had caused him to be late. I parked his car in the garage and was reaching for my camera bag when the door connecting to the house slammed open. Kyle stood there, still in his uniform, face flushed with something more than exertion. "We lost by 3 points, he said, his voice frighteningly quiet. The scouts from Penn State were there, watching an empty spot where I should have been playing. "I'm so sorry," I began, clutching my camera closer. "I lost track of time and—" "You lost track?" Kyle moved toward me with deliberate steps. "You lost track? Do you have any idea what you cost me tonight?" "It was an accident, Kyle. I didn't mean to." Before I could finish, Kyle's hands connected with my shoulders, shoving me backward against the garage wall. My camera, my precious Canon that I had saved for 18 months to purchase, crashed to the concrete floor. The sound of breaking glass was unmistakable. "My lens," I gasped, instinctively bending to retrieve it. Kyle kicked the camera, sending it skidding across the garage floor. "Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to lose something important." The next morning, I showed my mother the bruises forming on my shoulders and the ruined camera. I expected sympathy, intervention, protection. What I got was something else entirely. Mom examined the bruises with clinical detachment. "Do you know how important those scouts were? This was a crucial game for Kyle's future." "He pushed me into a wall," I said, disbelief making my voice shake. "Hard enough to leave bruises. You provoked him on one of the most stressful days of his life." She sighed heavily, as if I was the problem that needed solving. "Kyle has worked his entire life for these opportunities. His whole future depends on making the right impression." "What about my future?" I asked, holding up my broken camera. "This is my portfolio tool for college applications." 3 days later, Mom presented me with a new camera, a better model than the one I had before. "Let's put this unpleasantness behind us," she said as I unboxed it. And Diana? Try not to provoke your brother. He has enough pressure on him right now. The betrayal stung worse than the bruises. Something fundamental shifted in me that day. The mother I thought would always protect me had made her choice, and it wasn't me. At school that week, I spoke with Miss Ramirez, our guidance counselor. I didn't tell her everything, just enough about tension at home that she gave me a domestic violence pamphlet just in case you, or anyone you know, might need this information. I hid the pamphlet between the pages of The Photographer's Eye on my bookshelf. Information was power, and I was beginning to understand how powerless I had become in my own home. Zoe noticed the changes in me. You never want to hang out after school anymore, she observed during lunch, and you barely talked during the entire newspaper meeting yesterday. Just stressed about college applications, I lied, avoiding her perceptive gaze. That night, I started a new journal. This one wasn't filled with photographs, but with words. Dates, incidents, details recorded in a code only I could understand. If anyone found it, it would look like photography notes about lighting and composition. But within those notes, I documented every time Kyle's anger turned toward me. The following weekend, we had a family dinner to celebrate Kyle's performance in the latest game. He had recovered from the setback of the benching and scored 2 touchdowns. That's resilience, my father said, raising his glass in a toast. That's the Montgomery spirit. When life knocks you down, you get back up stronger. I pushed food around my plate, wondering if resilience was only valued when it served the family narrative. I was being resilient too, in my own way, but no one was raising a glass to that. Over the next 3 months, a clear pattern emerged. Kyle's behavior toward me worsened, while my parents' willingness to see it decreased proportionally. The incidents began to blur together, but my coded journal kept the timeline clear. March 15th. Kyle accidentally deleted my entire portfolio of photographs for my college application while using my laptop. Over 50 carefully edited images gone. When confronted, he claimed the external hard drive must have corrupted the files during backup. Dad believed him without question. Well, March 23rd. After finding my journal entries, though not understanding their true meaning, Kyle began entering my room whenever I was out. Things would be subtly moved, drawers left slightly open, messages letting me know nowhere was private. March 25th. I installed a lock on my bedroom door using my own money and a tutorial video. My parents demanded its removal that same evening. "We don't lock doors in this house," Dad said. "What are you trying to hide?" As Kyle's invasions of my privacy escalated, my academic performance suffered. My straight A average slipped to B's, then some C's. Focusing became difficult when hypervigilance consumed so much energy. In early April, Miss Ramirez arranged a meeting with my parents about my academic concerns. "Diana has always been an exceptional student," she explained, showing them the downward trend in my grades. This kind of sudden change often indicates something troubling the student. "Is everything okay at home?" "She's just being dramatic," Mom dismissed. "College application stress, probably boy troubles. You know how teenage girls can be." I sat silently, watching Miss Ramirez's face register concern at my mother's response. She glanced at me, then back at my parents. "Diana shows signs of anxiety that concern me professionally," she pressed. "We'll keep an eye on her," Dad promised in his courtroom voice, the one that sounded sincere but committed to nothing. Meanwhile, Kyle became something of a local celebrity after breaking the school record for touchdowns in a single season. The Oak Ridge Herald ran a feature calling the Montgomery family Oak Ridge royalty, complete with a photo shoot on our manicured lawn. I stood at the edge of those photos, smiling on command, feeling like an imposter in my own life story. Panic attacks became my new normal. My heart would race at the sound of Kyle's car in the driveway. I developed strategies to avoid being alone with him, timing my movements around the house like a prisoner planning an escape. One evening, passing my father's study, I overheard my parents discussing Kyle's prospects. "The NFL minimum salary is over $400,000, Dad was saying. "That's just the beginning. With his talent and our guidance, he'll go pro and take care of all of us." "We've invested everything in him," Mom agreed. "It's all going to pay off." I realized then that I wasn't just less important than Kyle. I was barely a consideration in my parents' vision of the future. Their retirement plan wore cleats and a jersey with our last name emblazoned across the back. My 18th birthday dinner was scheduled at my favorite restaurant, Marino's Italian. We had made it through appetizers when Dad received a call. One of the recruiting coaches wanted to take Kyle to dinner that same evening to discuss scholarship details. "We should go," Mom said immediately. This could be the deciding factor. "But it's Diana's birthday," Dad replied, showing a rare moment of consideration. "It's fine," I said automatically. "We can do this another time." Relief flooded their faces at my acquiescence. They left enough cash on the table to cover the bill and departed with Kyle, leaving me alone with half-eaten birthday pasta and the realization that I would always be secondary. That night, I began applying to colleges much farther from home than I had originally planned: California, Colorado, even Maine. Places where distance would create natural boundaries. When acceptance letters arrived, I hid them in a hollowed-out photography textbook. Kyle's control issues worsened with his growing status. He began checking my phone, monitoring my locations through shared family tracking apps. When I stayed late at school for photography club, he would text demanding to know who I was with. Zoe and I created a safety plan for after graduation. I would stay with her family for the summer before college if necessary. Her parents had always treated me with a warmth that made me realize how cold my own home had become. In late April, my classmate Noah gave me a ride home when I missed the bus after staying late to work on the yearbook. Kyle happened to be in the driveway when we pulled up. After Noah left, Kyle cornered me in the garage. "Who the hell was that?" he demanded. "Just a friend from yearbook committee," I answered, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I don't want to see him around here again," Kyle said, his voice low with threat. "People might get the wrong idea about what kind of girl you are." The absurdity almost made me laugh. I barely had friends anymore, let alone romantic prospects. Kyle had successfully isolated me from most of my social circles. My mother's pressure tactics grew more sophisticated. "Supporting your brother's journey is supporting this family," she would say. "We all have our roles to play, Diana. Yours is to maintain harmony at home during this crucial time." Harmony meant silence. Harmony meant invisibility. Harmony meant accepting that my needs would always come last. In secret, I met with financial aid counselors at the community college to discuss my options for independent student status. The criteria were strict, but I was gathering documentation just in case. May 3rd brought a crushing blow. My dream school, UCLA Film Program, rejected my application. The letter arrived the same day Kyle would later put me in the hospital. Looking back, it seems like the universe was marking the end of one chapter and the violent beginning of another. Championship game day dawned bright and clear, May 5th. The date is branded into my memory. Oak Ridge High was facing their longtime rivals, the Westfield Warriors, for the state championship. The entire town seemed to be attending. Businesses closed early. The mayor declared it Wildcat Spirit Day. I was scheduled to have the day off work, but at 9 that morning, I received a desperate call from Marissa at the gallery. "Diana, I hate to ask this, but Jen had a family emergency. Could you possibly cover her shift today? I know it's the big game, but we have that photography showcase opening tonight." I agreed without hesitation. The gallery had been my sanctuary throughout the chaos at home, and Marissa had been nothing but supportive of my work. Missing the game would raise eyebrows, but I was beyond caring about appearances. I left a note for my parents and texted Kyle a brief, "Good luck," before heading to work. Throughout the day, I received sporadic updates from Zoe, who was covering the game for the school paper. Tied at halftime. Kyle scored, but Westfield answered right back. Fourth quarter, down by 3. 2 minutes left. The final update came as I was closing the gallery. Lost by 1. Kyle fumbled on the goal line with 30 seconds left. My stomach tightened. I knew what Kyle was like after ordinary losses. A championship loss would be catastrophic, especially if he felt responsible. For a moment, I considered not going home, calling Zoe and asking to stay over. But my things were there, my hidden acceptance letters, my emergency fund. I couldn't abandon those. When I arrived home just after 9:30, the house was tomb quiet. My parents' car was in the driveway. but Kyle's was missing. Maybe he had gone out with teammates to drown their sorrows, buying me some time to gather my essential belongings. I entered through the kitchen door, hoping to slip upstairs unnoticed. My father sat at the kitchen island, nursing a whiskey, his face carved from stone. My mother stood by the sink, mechanically washing dishes that were already clean. "Where were you?" Mom asked without turning around. "At work? I left a note. Your brother needed everyone there today," Dad said, his voice flat. "I had a responsibility to my job," I countered quietly. "Your responsibility is to this family," Mom snapped, finally turning to face me. Her mascara had run, leaving dark tracks down her carefully powdered cheeks. "I texted Kyle good luck," I said, moving toward the stairs. "Is he home yet?" As if summoned by his name, the front door slammed open. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. Kyle appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in his uniform, dried sweat and dirt streaking his face. His eyes locked on me with laser focus. "There she is," he said, his voice slurring slightly. "The family saboteur." I recognized the signs immediately, the slight unsteadiness, the heightened color in his face. Kyle had been drinking, probably with teammates after the game. "I'm going to my room," I said, attempting to move past him. Kyle blocked my path. "You've always been jealous of me," he said, swaying slightly. "Always trying to undermine me." "That's not true," I replied, looking to my parents for support. They remained frozen in place, spectators to the unfolding scene. "No?" Kyle reached into his jacket and pulled out several crumpled envelopes. My acceptance letters. He must have searched my room while I was at work. "Then, what are these? Planning your escape while pretending to support me?" My heart thundered against my ribs. Those letters represented my only path to freedom. "Those were private," I managed to say. "Nothing in this family is private," Kyle shouted, throwing the letters at me. They scattered across the kitchen floor like fallen leaves. "We sacrifice for each other. We show up for each other. Except you, Diana. You just take and plot your little getaway." I bent down to gather the letters, my hands shaking. "I'm allowed to plan my own future," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, "just like you are." Something dangerous flashed in Kyle's eyes. He grabbed my arm as I reached for the last letter, yanking me upright with enough force that I gasped. "Your future? What about everything this family has done for you? While we were building something important, you were hiding, scheming, undermining." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Let go of me, Kyle. Diana has every right to apply to schools," Mom finally intervened, her voice hesitant, "just like you did." Kyle's attention snapped to her. "Stay out of this." I used his momentary distraction to wrench my arm free and move toward the door. My only thought was escape. Reaching my car. Driving to Zoe's. Kyle read my intention in my movement and lunged to block my exit. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As I pivoted to avoid him, Kyle shoved me backward with both hands. I stumbled, off balance, my hip connecting hard with the corner of the marble kitchen island. The impact spun me, and I fell sideways, the edge of the countertop striking directly across my ribcage. The pain was instantaneous and breathtaking. A distinct crack echoed in the sudden silence. I crumpled to the kitchen floor, unable to breathe, each attempted inhalation sending lightning bolts of agony through my chest. "Diana!" My mother's voice seemed to come from very far away. Kyle stood frozen, his anger giving way to shock as he stared at me gasping on the floor. For the first time, I saw something like fear in his eyes. The front door opened again. My father had been in the garage retrieving something from his car when the worst happened. He took in the scene with a lawyer's assessing gaze. Me on the floor, Kyle standing over me, my mother halfway between us. "What happened?" he demanded, all emotion carefully regulated out of his voice. "She fell," Kyle said immediately, tripped over her own feet trying to run away from a conversation. I tried to speak to contradict the lie, but could only produce a wheezing gasp. The pain in my side was blinding now, making dark spots dance across my vision. "We need to get her to the hospital," Mom said, kneeling beside me. "No hospitals," Dad replied sharply. Too many questions. I'll call Dr. Winters. He can check her privately. Dr. Winters was a family friend who had helped cover up Kyle's concussion during junior year so he could play in playoffs. He would do the same now. Richard, look at her, Mom argued, her voice uncharacteristically firm. She can hardly breathe. Fine, help her to bed. Ice and ibuprofen for tonight. If she's not better by morning, we'll reconsider. Mom helped me to my feet, supporting my weight as we slowly climbed the stairs to my bedroom. Kyle and Dad remained in the kitchen, already constructing the narrative that would protect the family image. In my room, Mom eased me onto the bed, arranging pillows to support my position. She brought ice packs, painkillers, and water, her movements efficient, but her eyes avoiding mine. It was an accident, she said as she arranged the ice against my ribcage. Kyle would never intentionally hurt you like this. He pushed me, I managed to say between careful, shallow breaths. Mom sat on the edge of my bed, finally meeting my gaze. Diana, you need to understand something. Everything this family has worked for is right on the brink of happening. Kyle's future, the scholarships, the draft potential. We've all made sacrifices to get here. I didn't sacrifice my safety, I whispered. You did. Her face hardened slightly. There are bigger considerations here. Dr. Winters will make sure you're okay. But involving hospitals, creating records, inviting questions, that could derail everything. What about my everything? I asked, tears finally breaking free. This pain is temporary, Mom said, standing up. The consequences of ruining Kyle's career would be permanent. For all of us, try to rest. She left me alone with the ice packs, the pain, and the devastating realization that my welfare would always be collateral damage in my family's pursuit of Kyle's glory. Sleep was impossible. Each breath was an exercise in controlled agony. By morning, I had developed a rattling cough that produced alarming flecks of blood on my pillow. When Mom came to check on me, her clinical detachment finally cracked at the sight of the blood. Richard, she called, her voice sharp with fear. We need a doctor. Now. Even my father couldn't argue with the evidence. Not the Oak Ridge Hospital, he insisted. Too many people know us there. We'll go to the urgent care in Bellevue. In the car, Mom sat beside me in the back seat, coaching me through our story. You fell down the stairs while carrying laundry. You were home alone when it happened and waited to tell us, thinking it was just bruising. Understand, Diana? This is important. I nodded, saving my breath and my strength. In that moment, survival took precedence over truth. But as the car wound through unfamiliar streets toward the Bellevue Urgent Care Center, something hardened within me. I had spent my life accommodating Kyle's future. It was time to claim my own. The Bellevue Urgent Care Center was a modern one-story building, with minimal waiting room traffic at 9:30 on a Sunday morning. Good for privacy, Dad had noted as he parked the car. Good for avoiding witnesses, I thought. Mom handled the intake paperwork, standing at the counter to block my answers from view. She wrote quickly, efficiently, creating the narrative that would protect the family reputation. 17-year-old female. Fell downstairs with laundry basket, delayed, seeking treatment, thinking it was minor. A nurse called my name within 15 minutes. Diana Montgomery? I stood carefully, each movement a study in controlled pain. The nurse, whose badge read Bailey, noticed my difficulty immediately. Let me get you a wheelchair, honey, she said, her kind eyes assessing me with professional concern. She can walk, my mother interjected quickly. It's hospital policy for suspected rib injuries. Nurse Bailey replied with practiced authority. Better safe than sorry. In the examination room, Bailey took my vitals, frowning slightly at my elevated heart rate and the shallow nature of my breathing. Doctor will be in shortly, she promised, giving my shoulder a gentle squeeze before leaving. Mom busied herself straightening items on the counter that didn't need straightening. Dad checked emails on his phone, maintaining the illusion that this was a minor inconvenience in his important day. The door opened again, and a woman in her early 40s entered. She wore a white coat over professional clothing, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, stethoscope around her neck. Good morning. I'm Dr. Amara Jenkins, she said, her voice carrying the precise clarity of someone who expected to be heard the first time. "I understand we have a fall injury?" "Yes, my daughter fell down the stairs yesterday," Mom began, stepping forward with the rehearsed explanation. Dr. Jenkins nodded but kept her focus on me. "Diana, is that correct? You fell downstairs?" Something in her direct gaze made lying suddenly difficult. "Yes," I said, the words sticking in my throat. "I'd like to examine Diana privately," Dr. Jenkins said, turning to my parents. "Standard protocol for teenage patients." "I'd prefer to stay," Mom replied immediately. "She's still a minor, and I'm her mother." "At 17, patients have certain privacy rights," Dr. Jenkins countered smoothly. "We find they speak more freely about their symptoms without parents present. It helps us make more accurate diagnoses." "I really think," Mom began. "It's hospital policy," Dr. Jenkins interrupted, her tone polite but brooking no argument. "The nurse will show you to our waiting area, where there's coffee available. This shouldn't take long." My father, perhaps recognizing another professional used to authority, placed his hand on my mother's arm. "Come on, Patricia. Let the doctor do her job." Reluctantly, my parents left the room. Dr. Jenkins waited until the door closed completely before turning back to me. "Now that we have some privacy," she said, her voice softening slightly, "let's start again. I'm going to need to examine your rib cage. Can you lift your shirt on the injured side?" I complied, wincing as the movement pulled at the damaged area. Dr. Jenkins drew in a sharp breath at the sight of the bruising. Dark purple and blue spread across my right side like an angry storm cloud. "That's quite an injury," she said, her tone neutral but her eyes sharp. "I'm going to press gently in a few places. Tell me where the pain is worst." Her examination was thorough but gentle. She listened to my breathing with her stethoscope, frowning at what she heard in my right lung. She noted the older, yellowing bruises on my upper arms without comment. "We'll need x-rays," she said finally. "I'm concerned about the possibility of broken ribs and potential lung involvement given that cough you've been trying to suppress." While waiting for the x-ray technician, Dr. Jenkins continued asking questions. Standard medical history at first, then increasingly specific ones about my home life. Each question was posed casually, as if merely gathering routine information, but I recognized the pattern emerging. "Do you feel safe at home, Diana?" she finally asked directly. "Yes," I answered automatically, the practiced response. Dr. Jenkins didn't challenge the lie outright. Instead, she made notes in my chart, her face unreadable. "The x-ray technician will be here shortly. I'll check back once we have the images." The x-rays were painful but quick. I was returned to the examination room to wait for results. Left alone with my thoughts and fears for the first time since entering the facility. Part of me wanted to maintain the protective fiction my family had constructed. Another part, growing stronger by the minute, whispered that this might be my only chance for escape. Dr. Jenkins returned 20 minutes later with a tablet computer. She closed the door firmly behind her. "Diana, I have your x-rays here," she said, pulling up the images. "I'd like to show you what I'm seeing." She positioned the screen so I could view it clearly. "You have 3 broken ribs on your right side," she explained, pointing to clear fractures visible on the image. "Additionally, you have what we call a partial pneumothorax, or a partially collapsed lung. That's causing your difficulty breathing and the blood when you cough." I stared at the evidence of damage inside me, suddenly unable to speak. "This type of injury," Dr. Jenkins continued carefully, "is inconsistent with a simple fall downstairs. The focused nature of the trauma suggests impact with a narrow, hard edge and considerable force behind it." When I didn't respond, she set the tablet aside and pulled her chair directly in front of me, our knees almost touching. "Diana, I need to know who did this to you." Her eyes held mine steadily, without judgment or disbelief. In that moment, with a near stranger showing more concern than my own parents, something broke inside me. Not like my ribs, a violent shattering, but like a dam giving way to long-suppressed waters. "My brother," I whispered, the truth finally escaping. "He pushed me into the kitchen counter." Dr. Jenkins nodded, no surprise registering on her face. And the other bruises? The older ones? Words came easier now, spilling out in halting fragments. Kyle's escalating behavior, my parents' willful blindness, the isolation, the threats, the constant fear. My mom said I should stay quiet because he has a future, I concluded, tears streaming silently down my face. A football scholarship, maybe even the NFL someday. Dr. Jenkins was silent for a moment after I finished speaking. When she finally responded, her voice carried a controlled anger that wasn't directed at me. He has a future? She repeated. Not anymore. She reached for the office phone on the wall, her movements deliberate and certain. Diana, I'm going to make 2 calls now. The first is to our social worker who specializes in cases like yours. The second is to the authorities. What you've described constitutes abuse. And as a medical professional, I am legally mandated to report it. Panic flared within me. My parents are right outside, I said. They'll never let you. They don't have a choice, Dr. Jenkins replied, already dialing. And neither do I. This isn't just about your broken ribs, Diana. It's about your safety going forward. As she spoke quietly into the phone, requesting both a social worker and police presence, I felt a strange mixture of terror and relief wash over me. For years, I had carried the weight of our family secrets alone. Now someone else was helping to bear the burden. The door burst open midway through Dr. Jenkins' second call. My mother stood there, face flushed with anger or anxiety, possibly both. What's taking so long? She demanded. We've been waiting for over an hour. Dr. Jenkins covered the phone receiver with her hand. Mrs. Montgomery, I'm going to have to ask you to return to the waiting room. I'll be out to speak with you shortly. Who are you calling? Mom asked, her eyes darting to the phone, then to my tear-streaked face. Understanding dawned in her expression. Diana, what have you done? Mrs. Montgomery, Dr. Jenkins said, her voice taking on an edge of steel. Your daughter has 3 broken ribs and a partially collapsed lung. This is a serious medical situation that requires specific protocols. Please return to the waiting area now. Whatever she told you is a misunderstanding, Mom began. She's been very emotional lately. Security, Dr. Jenkins said into the phone, never breaking eye contact with my mother. Examination room 12, please. Mom's face paled. She backed out of the room without another word. Dr. Jenkins completed her calls, then turned back to me. The social worker will be here in 15 minutes. Officer Reyes from Bellevue Police Department is already in the building for another matter and will join us shortly. I'm going to start treatment for your injuries while we wait. You'll likely need a chest tube to help reinflate your lung. As she prepared the necessary equipment, Dr. Jenkins continued speaking in a calm, reassuring tone. Diana, what happens next may seem overwhelming. There will be questions, statements, possibly court appearances. But I want you to know something important. You are not alone in this anymore. For the first time in years, I believed those words might actually be true. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The social worker, a competent woman named Susan Garcia, arrived first. She explained the protective order process, while Dr. Jenkins inserted a small chest tube to help my lung reinflate. Officer Reyes took my initial statement, his face remaining professionally neutral, even as I detailed the escalating abuse. My parents were interviewed separately in another room. Through the partially open door, I could hear my father's authoritative voice arguing legal technicalities. My mother's tearful explanations about misunderstandings and family stress. Their arguments held no power here. By evening, I had been transferred to Bellevue Memorial Hospital for overnight observation. A temporary protective order had been issued, preventing Kyle or my parents from contacting me. Officer Reyes informed me that investigators would be speaking with Kyle separately. That night, in the quiet hospital room, I experienced a strange sensation. Despite the pain in my ribs, the tube in my chest, and the uncertainty of my future, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. The hospital bed was narrow and the room impersonal, but no one here would hurt me or excuse those who did. Zoe visited the next morning, having pieced together what happened from social media rumors and a carefully worded call to the hospital. She brought my hidden photo journal from its hiding place in my room. "I figured you might need evidence," she said, placing the book in my hands, "and I thought you might need a friend even more." As I looked at my best friend standing beside my hospital bed, I realized Dr. Jenkins had been right. I wasn't alone anymore. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, I could see beyond tomorrow, beyond the next game, beyond the role I had been assigned in my family's dysfunctional play. I was finally writing my own story. The hospital kept me for 3 days to monitor my lung function and manage the pain from my broken ribs. During that time, a flurry of legal and social service activities took place around me. Susan Garcia, the victim advocate assigned to my case, became my guide through the confusing terrain of police reports, restraining orders, and victim services. "The temporary protection order will remain in effect for 14 days, Susan explained on my second day in the hospital. "During that time, neither your brother nor your parents can contact you directly. After that, we'll attend a hearing to determine if it should be extended." "Where will I go when I leave here?" I asked, the practical question of housing only now occurring to me. "We have several options," Susan replied. "Emergency foster placement, a youth shelter, or staying with a pre-approved friend or family member." I immediately thought of Zoe, whose parents had always welcomed me into their home. When I mentioned them, Susan made a note to begin the approval process. Detective Jackson from the Bellevue Police Department visited that afternoon to take my formal statement. Unlike Officer Reyes, who had focused on the immediate incident, Detective Jackson wanted the full history. "I need to understand the pattern of behavior," he explained, recording device set up between us. "Abuse cases, especially family violence, rarely begin with severe physical injury. There's usually an escalation." For over 2 hours, I detailed the progression of Kyle's behavior and my parents' enabling responses. Detective Jackson took notes beyond what was being recorded, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly letting me speak uninterrupted. "What happens to Kyle now?" I asked when we had finished. "He was arrested yesterday at football practice," Detective Jackson informed me, his tone matter of fact. "Currently, he's facing charges of domestic assault and battery. Given your age and the severity of your injuries, these are serious charges." The image of Kyle being led away from the practice field in handcuffs should have brought me satisfaction. Instead, I felt a complicated mixture of relief and guilt. Despite everything, dismantling the family mythology wasn't easy. My father wasted no time deploying his legal connections. Susan informed me that he had hired Winston Blackwell, the most aggressive defense attorney in the county, to represent Kyle. Already, they were working to minimize the charges, painting the incident as a one-time accident blown out of proportion. "Your father has also filed a motion to have the protection order lifted, arguing that it's unnecessary and disrupting the family unit," Susan told me. "We'll contest that at the hearing." While I was still in the hospital, my mother left several voicemail messages on Zoe's phone, attempting to reach me indirectly. Each one featured the same manipulative mix of concern and guilt. "Diana, honey, we're so worried about you. This has all spiraled out of control. Kyle feels terrible about what happened. It was an accident, you know that. Please call us so we can work this out as a family." I asked Zoe not to deliver any more messages. The doctors had been clear that stress would slow my recovery, and nothing induced stress like my mother's attempts to rewrite reality. Upon my release from the hospital, I went directly to Zoe's home. Her parents, David and Minji Kim, had been approved as temporary guardians while my case proceeded. They converted their home office into a bedroom for me, giving me the privacy and security I desperately needed. "Our home is your home," Minji told me, helping arrange my few belongings in the space, "for as long as you need." The Oak Ridge Herald ran a short article the following day. "Local football star arrested on assault charges." The piece was carefully worded to avoid libel, while still conveying the essential facts. Kyle's name, my name, the nature of the injuries. Our family's perfect facade had publicly cracked. The response from the Oak Ridge High student body was divided. Many of Kyle's teammates and friends rallied around him, spreading rumors that I had attacked him first or had fabricated the severity of my injuries to get attention. Others, particularly those who had witnessed Kyle's temper firsthand, reached out to offer support. An unexpected ally emerged in Coach Thompson, Kyle's football coach for 4 years. He contacted Detective Jackson voluntarily to provide a statement about Kyle's anger management issues. "I've seen the warning signs for years," he admitted in a statement that would later become part of the court record. "The rage after losses, the inability to handle criticism, the intimidation of younger players. I tried to channel it into performance on the field, but I recognize now that I might have enabled a serious problem." 2 weeks after the incident, I sat in a small conference room at the prosecutor's office, discussing whether to proceed with pressing charges. Assistant District Attorney Lisa Woodson laid out my options with brutal honesty. "If we move forward with the current charges, Kyle is looking at potential felony assault. With your injuries and the witness statements, we have a strong case. However, you should be prepared for an aggressive defense strategy that will likely involve attempts to discredit you." "What would that mean?" I asked, Susan's reassuring presence beside me. "They might bring up your academic decline as evidence of instability. They'll certainly push the narrative that this was an isolated incident during a high-stress situation. They might even suggest you provoked him deliberately." "That's not what happened," I said firmly. "I know," Ada Woodson assured me, "and we'll present the evidence to show that. But court proceedings can be difficult for victims. You'll have to relive the trauma repeatedly. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about my photo journal, the progression of fear documented in images and coded entries. I thought about other potential victims if Kyle's behavior continued unchecked. Most of all, I thought about my own future, and whether I could truly move forward without standing up for myself now. "I want to press charges," I decided. "Not out of revenge, but because there need to be consequences." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for early June. Entering the courtroom was one of the hardest moments of my life. Kyle sat at the defense table beside his expensive attorney, dressed in a suit that made him look younger and more innocent than the brother who had terrorized me. He didn't look up as I took my seat on the opposite side of the room. My father sat directly behind Kyle, his face an impassive mask. My mother was not present, having been called as a potential witness and therefore sequestered. When Kyle finally raised his head during the reading of charges, the look he gave me was not the intimidating glare I expected, but something more complex: confusion, perhaps even a glimmer of remorse. In that moment, I realized that he had never expected consequences. In his experience, there had never been any. The following days brought significant developments. First, all 3 universities still considering Kyle withdrew their scholarship offers. The carefully constructed future my parents had invested everything in collapsed in a series of formal emails expressing concerns about character and incompatibility with university values. My father's response was predictable. He called Zoe's house repeatedly until Mr. Kim threatened legal action for harassment. He sent a letter through his attorney accusing me of deliberately destroying family harmony and your brother's promising career. More surprisingly, several of Kyle's former girlfriends came forward with their own stories of controlling behavior and intimidation. None had experienced physical violence at the level I had, but their statements established a clear pattern that strengthened the prosecution's case. By late June, Kyle's attorney approached the prosecutor with a plea deal request. In exchange for pleading guilty to reduced charges, Kyle would accept mandatory anger management treatment, community service, and probation. The prosecutor presented the offer to me, making it clear that the decision was ultimately mine. "A trial would likely result in more severe consequences," Ada Woodson explained. "But it would also be more traumatic for you, with no guaranteed outcome." I considered my options carefully. If I accept the plea deal, what conditions can I request? Within reason, we can negotiate specific terms. What did you have in mind? Mandatory therapy, not just anger management. No contact with me for at least 2 years. And he needs to publicly acknowledge what he did, not just to the court, but in a statement that everyone in our community will see. The plea negotiations took another 2 weeks. In the end, Kyle accepted a deal that included all my conditions, plus additional requirements from the prosecutor. He would serve no jail time but would have a criminal record that could be expunged only after successful completion of a 2-year probation and treatment program. The final court hearing took place in July, nearly 3 months after the incident that had changed everything. I delivered a victim impact statement that I had rewritten dozens of times, trying to find the perfect balance between honesty and healing. The physical pain of my injuries is nothing compared to the betrayal of having my own family choose my abuser's future over my safety, I told the silent courtroom. For years, I was taught that my brother's potential was more valuable than my protection. Today, I reject that lesson and choose to value myself. Judge Caroline Martinez delivered a sentencing statement that validated everything I had experienced. This court rejects the notion that athletic promise or family status places anyone above the law, she declared. The pattern of enabling behavior displayed by the defendant's parents demonstrates how privilege can foster the very conditions that lead to violence. As part of the court's orders, my parents were required to attend family therapy sessions if they wanted to maintain any contact with me before my 18th birthday. My father initially refused but eventually complied when his attorney explained that the alternative was complete severing of parental rights. In the weeks following the court proceedings, Ms. Ramirez organized a support group for students affected by domestic violence. Without using my name or details, she created a space where others with similar experiences could find community. I attended anonymously at first, eventually becoming comfortable enough to share parts of my story. The justice system had spoken, but the real healing was just beginning. 1 year after Kyle shoved me into that kitchen counter, I stood in my small apartment in Los Angeles, arranging framed photographs on freshly painted walls. UCLA Film School had deferred my admission after learning about my circumstances, holding my spot until I was ready to begin. Now, at 19, I was finally starting the education I had dreamed about for so long. My first major project for documentary film class focused on survivors of domestic violence, specifically highlighting the stories of siblings abused by brothers or sisters. The professor had been initially skeptical about my ability to maintain objectivity on such a personal topic, but the rough cut had convinced him of my commitment to honest storytelling. Physical recovery had been slower than expected. My ribs had healed according to schedule, but phantom pain still flared during weather changes or particularly stressful periods. Dr. Jenkins had warned me this might happen. Trauma lives in the body, she had explained during one of my follow-up appointments. The physical and emotional aspects of healing are interconnected. Dr. Levine, my therapist for the past year, had helped me work through the complex emotions surrounding my family, the anger at my parents' betrayal, the guilt over Kyle's derailed future, despite knowing I wasn't responsible for his actions, the grief for the family relationships I had once believed in. Healing isn't linear, she reminded me during our weekly video sessions. Some days will feel like steps backward. That's normal and expected. My contact with my parents remained limited and structured. We met monthly in family therapy sessions, now conducted remotely since my move to California. My mother had shown genuine efforts to understand her enabling behaviors, though she occasionally still slipped into justifying past actions. "We really did think we were protecting the family," she said during a recent session. "It took losing you to realize we were actually destroying it." My father's progress was slower. His identity had been so wrapped up in Kyle's potential that adjusting to our new reality proved challenging. Still, he attended every session, sometimes participating meaningfully. Other times, simply listening in stone, faced silence. Kyle himself was 15 months into his treatment program. According to the reports forwarded by his case manager, he was making significant progress in therapy. He had written me a letter of apology 6 months into his program, which Dr. Levine had helped me process. I wasn't ready to respond yet, but I had kept the letter, recognizing it as a potential first step towards some future resolution. My new apartment mate, Jamie, was a screenplay writing major with a keen sense of personal boundaries. After growing up in a household where privacy was non-existent, living with someone who respected my space felt like a luxury. Jamie never entered my room without knocking, never borrowed my things without asking, never monitored my comings and goings. These simple courtesies, so basic in healthy relationships, still sometimes brought me to tears of gratitude. Dr. Jenkins remained an important figure in my life, providing medical consultation for my documentary and checking in periodically just to see how I was doing. She had been the first person to truly see what was happening, the first to take action when everyone else looked away. "You did the hard part," she insisted whenever I thanked her. "You told the truth, when it would have been easier to continue the lie." In March, I returned to Oak Ridge briefly to speak at a high school assembly about family violence. Standing at the podium in the auditorium where Kyle had once received athletic awards, I shared my story with students who had only heard rumors and newspaper accounts. "Abuse doesn't always look like the dramatic scenes you see in movies," I told them. "Sometimes it's subtle, incremental. A boundary crossed here, an excuse made there, until suddenly you're living in fear in your own home." Miss Ramirez hugged me after the presentation, tears in her eyes. "I wish I had pushed harder when I first noticed the signs," she said. "You gave me the pamphlet that helped me understand what was happening," I reminded her. "You planted the seed that eventually grew into action." Rebuilding my relationship with my mother was ongoing work. Our weekly phone calls had evolved from awkward, guarded exchanges to more genuine conversations. She had started individual therapy, in addition to our family sessions, working to understand how her own upbringing had shaped her responses to Kyle's behavior. "I keep thinking about all the times I should have protected you," she said during our last call. "All the moments when I chose wrong. I'm not asking you to be perfect," I told her. "Just to recognize what happened and make different choices going forward." My father remained more distant, still struggling with the collapse of the future he had envisioned. He attended family therapy and occasionally joined my calls with Mom, but our interactions remained formal. His healing journey would be longer, his recognition of his role in enabling Kyle's behavior slower to emerge. I had learned to accept this without taking responsibility for his progress. Zoe and I maintained our close friendship despite the distance. Her parents had become a second family to me, providing stability when my own family imploded. They had helped me move to Los Angeles, Mr. Kim driving the rental truck while Minji and Zoe followed in their car. My small collection of belongings, supplemented by donations from caring teachers and community members, had been carefully arranged in my new space by these people who had become my chosen family. My photography exhibition, Invisible Wounds, opened at a small community gallery near campus. The series featured portraits of domestic violence survivors, their faces partially obscured but their eyes direct and challenging. Each image was paired with a single sentence from the subject's experience. The show received positive reviews in the campus newspaper, with one critic noting the unflinching empathy of my approach. On campus, I helped form a student advocacy group for abuse survivors. We provided peer support, resources for navigating university accommodations, and educational workshops for the broader student body. Creating something positive from my experience helped transform my pain into purpose. Dating had seemed impossible for many months after leaving home. The idea of being vulnerable with someone, of risking potential control or manipulation, triggered too many painful memories. But Noah, who had given me that fateful ride home and subsequently stayed in touch throughout the ordeal, had moved to San Diego for college. Just close enough for occasional visits, just far enough to give me the space I needed. Our relationship was progressing slowly, built on a foundation of clear communication and respect. The first time he raised his voice during a minor disagreement about movie choices, he immediately recognized my physical flinch and apologized. We talked through it, establishing boundaries that made both of us feel secure. This was how healthy relationships worked, I was learning. Not through control and fear, but through mutual care and attention. As my film project neared completion, I reflected on how far I had come in just 1 year. From a teenager trapped in a cycle of abuse to a young woman creating her own path, the journey hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been panic attacks, sleepless nights, days when getting out of bed felt impossible. But there had also been moments of profound connection, creative breakthroughs, and the gradual rebuilding of trust in myself and others. Breaking the generational cycle of enabling abuse required first recognizing its existence. My parents had been raised in homes where similar patterns played out, though in different forms. Understanding this context didn't excuse their choices, but helped me place them within a larger framework of family dynamics. That single moment when Dr. Jenkins looked at me and said, "Not anymore," had changed everything. One person believing me, taking action, refusing to look away, had created the opening for healing to begin. Sometimes I still found myself holding my breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for safety to be revealed as temporary. Doctor. Temporary 7. Temporary. Levine called this trauma time. The way past experiences distorted my perception of present security. I was learning to understand my parents' flawed attempts at protection without excusing the harm they had caused. They had tried to shelter Kyle from consequences, believing this was love. Instead, they had enabled behaviors that hurt both of us. True protection would have meant boundaries, accountability, intervention when patterns first emerged. As I hung the final photograph in my new apartment, a self-portrait taken on my first day of film school, I thought about the title of my documentary. Justice Speaks Louder. In the end, that was what had saved me. Not silence, not family loyalty misapplied, but the clear voice of truth cutting through generations of enabling behaviors. The journey ahead still held challenges. Family healing would take years, not months. Trust would be rebuilt slowly, through consistent actions rather than promises. Kyle's path to rehabilitation remained uncertain, dependent on his commitment to change. My own recovery would continue to have difficult days mixed with the good. But standing in my own space, surrounded by evidence of my new life, I felt something that had been absent for so long. Hope. Not just for survival, but for thriving. For creating, for loving, for helping others find their voices as I had found mine. So what about your story? Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between family loyalty and your own well-being? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of survival and transformation. Remember that you deserve safety and respect in every relationship. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may you find the strength to speak your own truth when necessary.